Hey guys, I hope that everybody has had a great week. I just wanted to go over this Sunday's lesson for our Sunday school lesson, and it is about the temple being rebuilt. So we are going to be focusing on Ezra 4 through 6. That's where the Bible passage comes from, and I'm going to read our memory verse now. So it's Psalm 27:4, and Psalm 27:4 says, I have asked one thing from the Lord. It is what I desire, to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, gazing on the beauty of the Lord and seeking Him in His temple. So that is Psalm 27:4. So the point of today's lesson is that we can continue to obey God even when facing opposition. So even when we're kind of resistant about something, we can still continue to obey God no matter what. If we make that a point in our lives to obey God, we can do that. So the book of Ezra reflects God's desire for the restoration and obedience of His people. So as one of God's people, we should all be obedient. So through Jesus' sacrifice, He restores our relationship with God. So because of what Jesus did for us, He was able to restore our relationship with God, and I am so thankful for that today. So I'm going to go ahead and start with our story for today. And so like I said, it's coming from Ezra 4 through 6, and it's about how the temple was rebuilt. So the Persian king Cyrus issued an order allowing the Jews to return home and rebuild God's temple. King Cyrus also instructed that his people should give valuable things to help the Israelites in their work. So he wanted them to rebuild the temple, and not only that, but he wanted them to be able to give valuable things to the Israelites to help them as they were working. So after returning to the land, the people built an altar to offer the sacrifices to God again. Then they celebrated the Festival of Booths. Next, they began building the temple. Some people did not want the Jerusalem temple to be rebuilt. So there were some people who were all for it, and they really wanted it to be rebuilt. They wanted somewhere they could go. But there were also several other people who weren't so happy about the temple being rebuilt. So they caused a lot of trouble for the Jews because they knew that it was the right thing to do to rebuild the temple, but it made it hard for them because all of these other people were making them think maybe we shouldn't do it. So they were being a little resistant about it. So then the people just stopped building altogether. Years went by, and then Darius became the new ruler of Persia. God sent two prophets, Haggai and Zechariah, to tell the Jews to finish building the temple. The people obeyed and began to build the temple again. So God sent prophets to remind them of their obligation to Him. So as Christians, we have several obligations for God. And that was one of these that these two prophets were led to do, was to go back and finish building the temple because that's what God wanted them to do. So again, the Jewish people faced opposition to building the temple. So this means that they started to resist building the temple, like I said, because all of those other people didn't want it done. So they were thinking, maybe we shouldn't do this. So they were starting to feel a little opposed about doing that. So Tatnai, the governor of the region, and some others asked the Jewish people, who told you that you could finish the temple? They were kind of confused, like, who came up and told you that you could do this when we had told you not to? But God was with His people when this was happening. This time, the Jewish leaders did not listen to the opposition, so they wanted to get it done. Tatnai and the others agreed to allow the Jews to continue building the temple while they sent a letter to King Darius and waited for his instructions. So they wanted to keep building, and they were allowed to keep building, so that's what they did. But then they had to send a letter to King Darius, who was the ruler of Persia. They had to send the letter and wait for his instructions before they could really take off and go any farther. And when King Darius finally gave the instructions, he ordered that the archives in the library be searched. And then a scroll was found inside the library. There were scrolls found that recorded King Cyrus's decision to allow the Jewish people to return home and rebuild the temple. So now they were completely okay to rebuild the temple, and they were very excited about that. So King Darius sent word to Tatnai that the Jews could continue the work on the temple. Finally, the new temple was completed. The Israelites celebrated Passover in their new place of worship, rejoicing and offering the sacrifices commanded by the law. The people rejoiced that God had changed the king's attitude to allow them to return home and rebuild the temple. So they're saying that, because God approached him in that way, he had changed the king's attitude to allow them to actually rebuild the temple so that it could be there again. And, that's what a lot of people wanted, and that was a great thing. So the temple was created, and worship was restored because the temple was created again and rebuilt. So just always remember that we can continue to obey God even when we are facing opposition. So even maybe when we think that, when we're being resistant of something, we can still obey God. And I'm going to read our memory verse one more time. So highlight this in your Bible, write it on a note card, and keep this verse in mind. Remember, it's Psalms 27:4. I have asked one thing from the Lord. It is what I desire, to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, gazing on the beauty of the Lord and seeking him in his temple. So So keep that verse in mind, and we are actually still meeting outdoors for church, but hopefully we will be back in the church next week, so I hope to see all of you there. Y'all have a good week.